Director.
Now put your right hand over your heart and begin. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Director Robert is absent. Director McMillan,
Here.
Director Avila,
Here.
Director Waters,
Here.
Director Quady is absent.
Public comment, please.
Let's see, I know we don't have any public in the room because that's our investment person, if I recall correctly. There are, however, members of the public online, so if you want to do the little spiel.
So the spiel is that this portion of the agenda may be utilized by any member of the public to address the board of directors on any matter in the jurisdiction of the board that does not appear on the agenda and on matters that are not agendized but not designated as an action item. Depending on the subject matter, the board of directors may be unable to respond at this time or until specific topics are placed on the agenda of the board meeting in the audience in accordance with the Ralph M. Brown Act. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes.
If anyone online would like to speak during public comment, please use the raise hand feature. Not appear to have anyone who'd like to make public comment this evening.
Move on to presentations.
All right. Well, our first item today is, as the board may be aware, there's a program that's offered by the Aqua JPA, our insurer. They offer a range of professional development programs, but one of which is to get certifications in operations, human resources, and supervisor basics. This requires taking a number of different classes, some of which can be done online, some of which need to be done in person. And so I am happy today to be able to present this plaque with all 3 little completion tiles to Kara for completing the professional development program in all 3 areas: operations, human resources, and supervisor basics. So. Congratulations. Yeah, someone want to grab a quick pic? Oh, Raul, at the ready.
Yeah, we can do another one. We want you in the photo.
Okay.
Up to get this chair out. Sorry.
I tried.
I'm not a professional, but thank you. All right, super kids.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Any items need to be added to the agenda at this time? Move to the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar. Someone wants to pull something.
I'll second.
First and second.
Director Robert is absent. Director McMillan,
Yes.
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Waters,
Aye.
Director Quady is absent.
No action items tonight.
None tonight, no.
We'll move on to reports. Status report.
I know the monthly status report came out a little earlier this month since we didn't have that meeting on the 3rd, so. A little bit out of date. Things have happened since then, but we can answer questions if the board has any.
The board have any questions on the monthly status report?
The only thing I would like to see, and it was under the groundwater storage, I would like to see the totals. I mean, you give us the totals for each of the,
Oh, okay.
I'd like to see the total like 83,603 feet.
Okay, we'll talk internally about how best to present that because
Okay.
they aren't all in the same basins.
Hmm.
And they do kind of have different rules attached to them.
Yeah. different-
So I want to make sure we present that in a way that isn't confusing to anyone. So Ian and I can talk about that.
The only one I was gonna ask for is, any updates on the S&P and phase 3? Is it moving along?
Great question, Director Avila. We did receive the initial inquiry from Los Virgins last week to be served from Essence Creek. And we're drafting the agreement between both agencies so it could be executed and then brought to this forward at a later date for approval.
Would it change, is that gonna change our designs at all or the way it's routed, or would they run out to meet it?
No, the SMP 3 will end at Santa Rosa Road and Hill Canyon Road, and that's whereabouts LB plans to connect to the SMP.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We move approval of that or we just move on?
As long as there's nothing to approve, so.
So
Answer
general
questions?
manager's report?
Okay, just a couple of meetings to highlight. I did, this is all late. June, we had held a general managers roundtable. Devin Upadahe as the acting GM ran that meeting. Also had a meeting that same day about the treated water surcharge. There's also a meeting tomorrow on the treated water surcharge I'll be going to. And then also I wanted to highlight in late June that a number of us, me, Ian, Charlotte, and Jennifer all went out and spent a day with Eastern Municipal Water District out in Paris, Perris, Paris.
Beautiful.
Lovely Paris. No, there was no Eiffel Tower to be seen. But we did get to see their control room and we did tour some facilities and we spent a lot of time talking there. And, you know, they're obviously geographically distanced, you know, they're a fellow member agency, but we have a lot of interests in common. So it was a really productive relationship building discussion and a really good experience. We will be hosting them sometime this fall. So I think that's all I have to report.
Okay, quarterly investment report.
Good evening, directors. Tonight, one of my first items is the quarterly investment report. Kind of outlines where we are with all of our investments. And tonight's meeting, I brought in Elaine Sampson from Chandler Asset Management Group, who handles all of our investments. Just to kind of give you an update on what the market's looking like and kind of how our portfolio has been doing. So turn it over to Elaine.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elena Marie Sampson. I appreciate you having me here today. I'm here on behalf of Chandler Asset Management, as Dan mentioned. I will be trying to figure out if you all have the packet that I'll be going through.
It's in
our.
Okay, right. Okay, so I'll refer to the pages that I'm looking at. It's 154 of your packet. It says number 3 on the bottom right-hand side. I'll use the bottom numbers as I go through the presentation. So as we get started here, first of all, just want to talk about where we are from an economics perspective. In the first part of the year, in this first quarter, we talked a lot about resiliency. Overall, this was resiliency in terms of how the labor markets were doing, how the consumer was doing. And the way that I've been describing it is that the party is winding down, the punch bowl is getting taken away at this point. And what that means is that we're seeing the savings rates are starting to decline, credit card delinquencies are starting to increase, and we're starting to see the labor market start to weaken. And so all of this is really catching up with the consumer. And as consumers, we make up 2/3 of the US economy. So that just gives you a sense of what's driving this. What this means for the Fed in terms of what you see on slide 3 is that they have chosen to stay at a level of 5.25 to 5.5%. We've been here for about a year. And the market in turn has reversed course, whereas the market was anticipating 6 rate cuts of 25 basis points at the start of the year. They're now down to 2, with the first one being in September, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We at Chandler are continuing to watch the labor markets and the consumer to get a sense of where we anticipate going. So if you move forward to the next page in terms of employment, what I'm talking about is that you can see on the left-hand side that the overall pace of hiring has been cooling. The first part of the year was particularly strong, but what you don't see on the page is the number of revisions that have taken place over the course of the data. And what this has meant is that we see a lot less non-farm payrolls than what may be represented when you hear the headlines on the news each time. They never report their revisions. That's not as interesting, it seems. But what that in turn translates to with regards to unemployment, we're now at 4.1%, which is what the Federal Reserve anticipated us ending this year at when they first started talking about cuts last December. Here in California, which I think is a little bit more interesting to us, we're actually on the high end of where unemployment is for the country. We are the highest only behind District of Columbia. So we are the highest of all the states at 5.25% with our unemployment. And we've added a bit less jobs than a lot of the rest of the country. In April, for instance, we only added 4,000 jobs in our entire state. So a much weaker picture when you look at things a little bit more closely for our state. If you move forward two slides to slide 6, this is the big news. This is what is causing us to focus on the rates being so high from the Federal Reserve. The big reversal that we saw last week was that we saw the first deflationary event with regards to CPI. So I'm distinguishing between two terms, disinflation, which means a slower rate of inflation, versus deflation, meaning a negative print. So we saw CPI come in at negative 0.1% month over month. So that was the first print we saw there. And this all translates to a 3% inflation year over year. Now, on the right-hand side of the slide, you see PCE, and I point us to this because that's what the Federal Reserve actually looks at. We all talk about CPI, they care about PCE. The dotted line you see there is the one that they care. That's called core PCE. It's currently at 2.6%, and they're targeting it to get down to 2%. We are looking for that next print to take place next week, Friday. So I'm going to move us forward one more slide and talk about the consumer, which I mentioned is the real driver in the U.S. economy. Overall, we saw, again, strength in the first quarter, but the weakness is really showing up here in the second quarter. We saw a larger than expected decline in retail sales here in May, and they were virtually unchanged from that weakness in June, meaning, again, all the good news happened in Q1. Moving forward, a couple of pages to slide number 9, the one that says housing on the top. The big story that I want to talk about here is that home builder sentiment is down. Why do I mention that? Well, they're feeling a couple of pressures in a couple of different directions. One, single family homes, the supply is down because they are feeling the pressure of the cost of construction loans. So that rate of 5.25 for the overnight rate is causing their loans to also be higher. And secondarily, in some communities, not all, there's starting to be pressure against densification. So the idea of multifamily homes showing up in communities that had been single family homes. Some communities are starting to push back against that. And so as a result, you look at something like the very, very high home prices that we all see hitting records. The affordability for homes has just really gotten to a place where it's a challenge. This morning, there was a release on housing starts being up in June. That's a positive with a glimmer of hope that we've reached the plateau, the heights of mortgage rates because we anticipate these federal fund rates coming down. But, again, builders are feeling a little bit weak in sentiment. So continuing forward, a couple of slides going to slide 11. What this means for the Federal Reserve, as I said, we got stuck with inflation being a little bit higher than they anticipated, but with two consecutive prints of inflation coming down, there's the increased likelihood of a cut in September. Finally, with bond yield, what I've described this as is a absolute roller coaster on the left-hand side, because every time there's a newsprint about inflation coming down the way we want, we see the yields start to tank very quickly. And then as we realize it was only one print and not three, we need to see consistency of moving in the right direction, rates start to come back up. So that's the roller coaster that you see. So I'll pause there, take a breath and see if there's any questions before I talk about your portfolio specifically. All right.
They call out non-farm payroll.
Yeah, so I had the same question when I first started looking at this work. Why I thought, what do they have against the farm workers, frankly? And frankly, it's just because there's two different bureaus that measure the numbers. And so the Bureau of Agriculture does farm workers and the Bureau of Labor does everyone else. So as a result, the non-farm payrolls comes out, then at some point they combine them, but at that point, no one cares.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. The one other point is that it's a seasonal set of workers, so it's a little bit harder to count. All right. Thank you for that question. So in terms of your portfolio, we are on slide 15. The key that I want to talk about here is page 15 on the bottom. It's on your slide, the board packet 167.
Thank you.
In the PDF. So I'm looking at, we are co-fiduciaries with the board, making sure that we stay in full compliance with both your investment policy as well as California government code. And you can see that we are in compliance across the board. This is a new template, so you can see a little bit more information in terms of what levels we're at with each one of your guidelines. But let's move forward to slide 19. It's the one that says portfolio characteristics. I'm going to start at the bottom of the page where it says market value and work my way back up. That's because that's kind of the headline that people want to know. How much money are we managing? We're managing $167 million. You can see that that is $3.7 million lower than where we were in March. However, I'd like to note that the district needed to make a withdrawal of about $5.6 million. So the delta there is really important because that means there was nearly $2 million in realized earnings and realized and unrealized earnings that happened in the portfolio that you were able to take out 5 million, but were able to, yes, take out the 5 million, but you're only 3 million down thereabouts. So these earnings are a result of the market yield decreasing. So as I said, I'm moving up the page from 5.16% to 4.98. And there's an inverse relationship between market yield and market price, and also the higher investment income. And that's what you see with regards to the purchase yield. We're continually investing in securities that are at much higher rates. This last quarter, we were investing securities that were somewhere between the range of 4.3 and 5%. And these are securities that we'll be holding for 5 years. So different from money market funds where the yield changes every 30 days. These are securities that will be in your portfolio for up to 5 years. So you'll really have locked in those yields for longer. So very much a positive. And that supported your purchase yield increasing to 3.93%. If I move forward to slide number 20, this just shows you the overall mix. And I'll note this gets to be really boring for folks after a while. It doesn't change a ton because we really like to focus on having U.S. Treasuries and agencies in order to support the safety and liquidity mandate. I will tell you on my ride here, I was talking to another district, another water district who is coming up with a bit short with regard to their debt service payment that they need to make a couple of days short. And what they are doing is using this safe and liquid portfolio to be able to make the payment. And that is able to be sold very, very easily in such a way that they're going to be able to sleep well tonight, knowing that they can take the money out when they need it. We've done things similarly for this district as well, working with Dan to make sure that your payments are similarly made. So again, that's part of the reason why we keep such a large percentage in U.S. Treasuries and agencies. So finally, I'm going to turn us to what we call the report card, which is slide 25. And I believe it's I think it's page 176 in your portfolio, but it's 25 on the bottom. And it says investment performance at the top. This shows that the district continues to outperform your publicly available benchmark, which is the U.S. Treasury 1 to 3 year Treasury benchmark. And you, on a 12-month basis, outperformed by 4.89% was the portfolio's returns versus the benchmark at 4.53%. And then if you see it since inception on the right-hand side, 2.79% versus 1.82. So I'll stop there to see if there's any further questions about the portfolio.
Questions?
Yeah, with, consideration of your previous slides of the section of how the
Yes.
market's doing now and where our investments are now, do you foresee having to make any changes to stay on top of things, to head in the right direction?
Yeah, so the one big change, if we go back to slide 19, and I apologize, I don't have your board packet in front of me, so I just have my numbers. So slide 19, the one that says portfolio characteristics, what you will see is the number that says average modified duration. Our intention is to stretch that out just a bit more. So we're allowed to go about 10% above or below the benchmark duration. And we want to do that now before the Federal Reserve starts to cut rates in order to lock in yields before they start to come down. So that is what our intention is in terms of changes that you would see. In terms of mix, we're also being very, very mindful of what we're purchasing. We are really wanting to stay up in quality when it comes to different types of asset classes that we're purchasing. So we're focused on buying Freddie K's, which is a Freddie Mac product for multifamily homes. We all still need places to live. So that is one of the places that we want to invest. And we're looking at investing a little bit less in some of the weaker names. They'll still be eligible, but we would avoid those a bit more in this environment, given the potential for having a recession at some point, just where we are in the business cycle.
Any international investments? Councilman before?
So the international investments, so under California Government Code, I always picture it when I start to say it, is we have to purchase everything as USD. So you may have securities such as Toyota Motor Credit of America in your portfolio. I'm going to just check your issuers list before I speak completely out of turn, but they have to be domiciled with business risk here in North America, or specifically in the United States, and be a US dollar name. And so I'm checking to see you do have Toyota Motor Credit in your portfolio. It's about at 1.57%. These are cars that are only secured by vehicles that are sold here in the US, owned by individuals who live here in the US. So that's what makes it a US based name, even though the ultimate parent company is a Japanese company.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 4, workplace violence prevention plan training.
All right, tonight we have Daniel Cohen, our emergency response coordinator, is going to provide some training on our workplace violence prevention plan that was recently adopted. This is a California state requirement. Our staff has already undergone training at the last all-employee meeting, but it is a requirement of law that the board also gets some training. So we just have a brief overview. Daniel will provide momentarily.
Good evening, directors. Please allow me to share my screen. All right, as Christine mentioned, I'm here to present on the workplace violence prevention plan and also provide a brief training on the plan. And we'll get right into it.
Is there a way to make the box at the bottom go away?
Make it disappear right now.
Excellent, thank you.
Should be gone any second.
It moved and got smaller.
There it goes.
There's a lag. There we go.
Perfect. All right, so there is a regulatory requirement behind workplace violence prevention. Cal OSHA has been developing a general industry standard for some time, but that was accelerated in the aftermath of a mass shooting that occurred at a rail yard in San Jose. It was a Valley Transportation Authority. A gunman targeted his coworkers and ended up killing 9 people before taking his own life. So the state senator from that area introduced California Senate Bill 553 that was signed by the governor last September and added the workplace violence prevention planning requirement to the California Labor Code. Many people who knew the gunman believe that it could have been prevented. He had a history of conflicts with his coworkers, and he exhibited suspicious behavior, including early warning signs of potential to commit violence. And that's often the case, especially with perpetrators who are known to their victims. So the law became effective July 1st, 2024. And although it's specific to our work sites, we understand that a violent incident could occur anywhere. And we believe that the policies and the best practices that we present could help our staff anywhere they might be. The district will continue to have a zero tolerance policy for violence in the workplace. We'll also continue to have a strict non-retaliatory policy for any employees who report violent incidents, threats of violence, suspicious behavior, suspicious activity. Each report and incident will be taken seriously and reviewed on a case-by-case basis. And just like any other policy in the employee handbook, this is a condition of employment. So employees who violate the policy can be disciplined. And the plan can be provided upon request and is available to our staff through our internal network. Here are some key definitions in the plan. These are a comprehensive list of the definitions. On the left side, you'll see definitions that are included in the law. On the right side are some supplemental definitions that we included that provide more clarity to our policies and procedures. One that I wanted to point out is the types of violence. It is defined in the law. There are 4 different types. One could be violence committed by a stranger. The next violence type is somebody who is known to the district, but has no connection to an employee. The third type of violence is violence committed by an employee or a former employee. And the fourth type is somebody who does have a personal relationship with an employee, but does not work for the district. And again, all of these are defined in detail in the definition section of the plan. Violence prevention in the workplace is a shared responsibility. All of us are responsible for maintaining a workplace environment free of violence and implementing the policies in this plan. All district representatives and employees, including board members, are also responsible for being involved in the plan. So that could include reporting a workplace violent incident, threat of violence, or any suspicious behavior that you witness, either here or virtually online. Other employees do have additional responsibilities. Our managers and supervisors are responsible for implementing and enforcing the plan in their departments. We do have designated plan administrators. The emergency response coordinator itself has been designated as the primary administrator, responsible for maintaining the plan, making any changes, receiving reports, and responding accordingly. Our manager of HR and risk management is responsible for conducting investigations. Our assistant manager of HR and risk management is the alternate plan administrator and alternate investigator as well. And our general manager has overall authority and approval of the plan. Training is required by the law, part of the reason we're doing it tonight, although we do think the procedures and policies are important for you guys as well. So we are doing training upon plan implementation. We did that for all employees last month. And then we do have to do training annually or anytime there are changes or any additions to the plan as well. And then a full list of these elements are included and spelled out in the plan. Reporting is one of the most important aspects of the plan, in my opinion. It is the best way to prevent an incident from occurring before it occurs. So what should be reported are any incidents, obviously, any threats, any suspicious behavior or activities, or any new or previously unrecognized hazards that could be with our security policies or malfunctioning equipment. It is cliche, but if you see something, say something. If there's an elephant at the train station, let us know. That does include you guys. You guys are here for tours, for meetings, and you could see something that somebody else doesn't. And again, we do have a strict non-retaliatory policy for any reports. They will result in either an inspection or an investigation, depending on the nature of the report. And all personal identifying information will be kept confidential to the extent that we can. We do have several mechanisms for directors to submit reports. During an emergency, obviously call 911 if it's an imminent threat or an active threat. We do have the control room who can also initiate notifications to staff and provide surveillance and situational awareness to law enforcement as they respond. We do recommend that people work together and multiple people can make multiple notifications. So somebody can call 911 or text 911 and somebody else can notify the control room. Some non-emergency reporting methods for you guys is going to be verbal or written to the general manager. Anonymous reporting methods go to law enforcement. We do have a confidential employee hotline for our staff to submit anonymous reports as well. And then self-care resources that we've included in the plan are the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And then we do also confidential employee assistance program for staff. All of this
Sorry, just
go ahead.
quick before you move on from this slide. Say the written reports to the general manager, would that go to her email? And if she's out, would it be prudent of us to also request that they CC The assistant general manager.
Definitely.
Just
Yeah.
thinking ahead here.
If Christine's not here, I would recommend CCing the deputy general manager and legal counsel as well. An additional option. And then all of this contact information is included in the plan in Appendix E. So we do have emergency response procedures. This would be during an active shooter or an active threat situation. And it will depend, our response will depend on a lot of different factors. The nature and the location of the incident, if it's an emergency or not, the type of workplace violence that it is it somebody who's known to us, who knows where to go and knows where people are? Or is it a random act? The number of perpetrators and what weapons and potentially firearms that they're carrying. The ability for victims or witnesses to call 911 and notify others. And then the proficiency of our security systems and procedures. So we will activate the run, hide, and fight protocols. So if you are in the situation, the first option is to run or to evacuate. You'll leave your belongings behind. You'll help others evacuate with you unless they refuse to leave. And then you'll use evacuation routes that provide distance and cover so you don't inadvertently enter a hazardous situation. These will be a little bit different than evacuations that we might do for a fire or a hazardous materials release. We do have assembly areas for those. But for an active shooter situation, we will not assemble. We'll keep running until you're somewhere safe. And lastly, heed advice from law enforcement. Keep your hands raised and visible. And if they haven't arrived yet, give them a call when you're safe. The next best option, if you can't run, is to hide or to shelter in place. You want to hide out of the view of the threat in the safest possible place. If you can go somewhere where the walls might be thicker or more protective and there's no windows or fewer windows, you'll want to do that. If you can't, you'll want to close and lock the doors and the windows behind you. Close any blinds or curtains or covers that you can. Turn off the lights, barricade entry points, and prevent the threat from accessing your location. You'll want to remain quiet, silence your cell phones and other devices. This is not a situation where you would call 911. You would either text them or hope somebody else is, or call them and leave it on silent. And then you'll stay in place until you receive an all clear message or you determine that it's safe to evacuate. But if there's any doubt, remain sheltered in place. And the last option, if you're unable to run or hide, all staff, when in imminent danger, are authorized to physically fight the perpetrator as a last resort. You'll want to use as much physical aggression as you possibly can in an attempt to incapacitate the threat and take away any weapons that they have. And you'll be able to use whatever you have as a weapon. So common objects like a phone or a water bottle, something bigger like a chair or a fire extinguisher, anything that might be effective. Some other tactics that could help you in this situation, the element of surprise. If you can sneak up on them, the speed of your actions, if you can be quick, and then the number of people who can gang up and attack as a group is a way that could be successful in this situation. But most importantly, be decisive and commit to your actions because your life could depend on it. The last couple slides here, as required by law, all reports will be recorded and added to the district's violent incident log. We do have a reporting template to assist with this, and then it will be logged and recorded for a number of years as required by law. This report will be compiled with any investigative documents or witness statements and other important information. So in summary, this plan again was finalized on June 27th and became enforceable on July 1st. The training as required upon plan implementation occurred tonight, and it will be required annually going forward or anytime there are changes. We do have copies of the plan available for you upon request. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Any questions?
Right.
If I could chime in and point out that Cal OSHA took their sweet time coming up with a model policy, and even and despite that amount of time, it was not a model of clarity. And Dan did a good job of turning that around quickly and coming up with something more clear than the model policy. So I want to commend him on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Grant. On to a more fun presentation for me is response and coordination to the recent wildfires, which have occurred as recently as within the last hour.
I missed.
How's it?
Yeah.
So yeah, we just had one that started off Ventu Park Road. Looked like it was in between the off-ramp and the freeway, and kind of near the gas station off Ventu Park and the intersection with Newberry Road out in Newberry Park. Don't have enough time to include that in this presentation. But a lot of the stuff that I did in the last hour, you're going to see in the coming slides. So Ventura County Fire Department announced the commencement of the 2024 fire season on June 28th to become effective on June 30th. Traditionally, fire season in Ventura County begins in May or earlier in June, but due to late season precipitation and abnormally high fuel moistures at this point in the year, it was delayed. But this declaration effectively suspends all burn permits in the county and activates additional preparedness measures. So we'll have additional hand crews, fully staffed dozer and heavy equipment crews 24/7, a fully staffed Colson Chinook very large helitanker block, and operation of seasonal fire station 16 in the Lockwood Valley. So since June 28th, we've had several significant fires across the county and across Southern California. The first one actually occurred on June 28th before the official start of fire season. But response to all of these fires include an aerial attack. 5 of the 7, I guess now 6 out of the 8 that have occurred up until today to utilize Lake Bard. Starting with the Sentinel fire, Friday, June 28th, it was in the hills in North Simi Valley, east of Erringer. It consumed about 5 acres before it was put out. On Sunday, June 30th, early afternoon, the Knolls fire broke out in the Santa Susana Pass, not too far from where the Woolsey fire started, but they were able to keep it under 1 acre. So we have multiple means of receiving alerts that a fire has started in real time. As seen in the screenshot on the right, through our coordination with Ventura County Fire, a few of us here at the district are registered to receive text messages directly from Ventura County Fire Dispatch. So this is the same notification that the aviation unit receives. Usually when we receive one of these, we know there's going to be a pretty robust response. This is for any fire on the east side of the county that could impact Lake Bard. The other screenshot is from the Pulse Point app, which you may have heard of. It's also a website, but it sends out alerts as soon as dispatch receives a call that there is a fire. You can configure your device to receive an emergency alert for vegetation fires, structure fires, hazardous materials releases. It actually also works for calls for CPR. So if you're CPR certified, you can register. You have to share your location permanently, but when there's somebody nearby who needs CPR, it will notify you. Just before noon on Wednesday, July 3rd, the Sequoia fire started in Simi Valley near the intersection of Sequoia and Fitzgerald. This one was kept to 1 acre. And just a couple hours later, on the same day, the Sharp fire ignited. It was the biggest fire that we've had over the last couple of weeks. It started near Sharp Road and Ditch Road, north of Simi Adventist Hospital. And this was a really robust response. We had an aerial attack from multiple aircrafts, dozens of dips in Lake Bard, and we did have fixed wing aircrafts dumping FOSCheck on the fire lines as well. I wanted to share another resource that we use for situational awareness. We use the alert wildfire cameras. The top picture is a map of where all the cameras are in the area, but there are thousands across the state. And then the bottom picture is the image from one of those cameras during the sharp fire. So usually when you see heavy smoke like that, or you can see flames, you know it's going to be a pretty big incident, and it's safe to expect an aerial attack.
Yeah, that was near my house, and I had the helicopters flying over my house though.
I think we had several staff members who live nearby as well.
Yeah.
Who reported that too. But one thing I wanted to share, just an anecdotal story. I stopped by our control room after the fire started. And I'm not an operator, but gotten a feel for what looks kind of normal. And one of the SCADA screens showed one of the trend lines just going straight up. So I asked Eddie, our operator, what is going on with that. And he said, oh, that's the demand in Simi Valley. So the Simi region started demanding over 60 CFS when they were demanding around 25 CFS before the fire started. So that was over half of our total demand at the time. And just goes to show how our operators are able to adapt quickly with little notice, close a few valves on the other side of the system, and keep water in Simi where it needed to be. The next couple of fires were the Rancho fire and the View fire. In the early evening on July 5th, the Rancho fire started on the hillside above the 101 and the 23 southbound interchange. It almost got to 14 acres before it was extinguished. And the next afternoon, just after 2 p.m., the View fire started out in Newbury Park. That fire made it to 14 full acres before it was put out. The screenshot on the bottom left is the Watch Duty app. I showed you, but really useful. It's actually a nonprofit organization made up of mostly volunteers who monitor public safety radio traffic. So they'll hear stuff over the radio and share it on there, along with information from cameras, from flight radar, and from public safety organizations. So it's a good one-stop shop to receive information in real time. The screenshot on the right is from the Ventura County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services website, vcemergency.com. And this is a good place to go for evacuation warnings in local neighborhoods, road closures, and other important public safety information. Lastly, for today was the Rockfield fire. This one started in Oak Park early in the evening on Thursday, July 11th. It received a significant and immediate response due to its proximity to local neighborhoods and an elementary school. So we received dips from a Ventura County Firehawk in Lake Bard, along with 2 LA County helicopters, which one of our residents took on that evening. Due to the quick and dynamic attack, it was limited to just 1.7 acres. And just to showcase one more resource that we have that we use often is the Flight Radar app. That's a screenshot on the left. Monitors air traffic. So even look anywhere in the world, but it shows where an aircraft has been and where they're going. So this isn't from the Rockfield fire, but it shows a helicopter dipping in the lake, making a circle in the lake, and then heading out to one of the fires in Simi Valley. Here are just some more pictures that we took during the incidents. We have 2 Ventura County Firehawks in the lake. We also have the Colson helitanker that I mentioned earlier. The Firehawks have a 1,000 gallon capacity and each can hover fill in about a minute. The Colson, very large helitanker is the official name for it, is a contractor supporting what's been called Southern California's Quick Reaction Force. It's sponsored by Southern California Edison. It's in partnership with Ventura, Los Angeles, and Orange County fire departments. So one of these helitankers is located in each county at all times. The one here is at Camarillo Airport, and it has a 3,000 gallon capacity that can fill in about a minute and a half. So after each extraction from the lake, we do follow up with the fire department. We want to know where they most recently dipped, how long ago it was, if they decontaminated between then and now, just to mitigate our risk of potential contamination.
And by that, we mean quagga mussels.
And quagga mussels is a big one.
Regardless.
So they do utilize U.S. Forest Service standards for decontamination. And regardless, we do our due diligence and follow up to find out where they were. And following up with the fire department for these last 7 incidents before today, we learned that they made 25 dips just with the Firehawks alone, totaling about 14,000 gallons of water. So that averages about 650 gallons per dip. And again, that's only for the Firehawks. That doesn't include the helitanker, which probably made about the same number of dips and has about triple the capacity. To summarize our resources and coordination, here's a list of all of them. Help us be alerted, stay informed, and maintain awareness. It's thorough, but it's not exhaustive. And often with these fires, we're also dealing with other issues like power outages, communications issues. So they can be dynamic, and we could lean on other resources and coordination. I also wanted to highlight, this is a video, should start. Highlight our external affairs team. They've done some great work in response to the fires as well, and our resources team. So we did issue a press release. I believe it was going to go out today, regarding the district's involvement in the wildfire response. So it included a quote from the Ventura County Fire Chief, copied there on the screen. It also included a quote from our general manager, and just highlighted the critical services and partnership that we provide our communities with the fire department. So our team also posted the incident, the use of Lake Bard, on the district's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts. It did receive a total of 5,847 views as of this morning, 117 likes and 17 reshares, including one from the Simi Valley Acorn. So this one gained a lot of traction for us. And it's just a great example of furthering our interagency partnership with the fire department, and a great way to promote public recognition and trust in the district. Lastly, I just wanted to provide an update on the Wellfield 2 Helispot project. These are some of the most recent pictures of the project. It's going to be a great additional resource for aerial firefighting response. It's a great and strategic location. There's not many other surface water sources in that area. And I know many years ago, a fire actually burned through that facility. So it'll protect our facility and that community in that area. Part of our agreement with providing the fire department with the space and the future use is that they've conducted all of the preliminary work. So it's taken quite some time. It's something that they do when they aren't busy putting out fires. So the work that's been done just during this past year, they've further graded and compacted the area. They've brought in some concrete pads, laid them down and surrounded them with some road base. And they'll put the dip tank is there currently on those concrete pads, and they did lay additional pads for them to land if they need to. But the location is right there at the well field across from Grimes Canyon Tank. You can kind of see the tank in the distance in the bottom left. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions on this presentation. That's a picture of the Firehawk testing out the location when they first purchased it before they were able to paint it. So it was still a Black Hawk at that time.
Nice. Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one question of, being that quagga mussel is a terrible thing for any lake to get, really, especially our lake that's filtered water that we purchase from that. Would it be a good idea to maybe do some of these fill stations like they're doing at the well field here to prevent anything like that getting into our lake?
This could be beneficial at the lake. Especially there are a decent amount of incidents where they come once and then the fire's out.
Yeah,
Mostly on the east side of Simi Valley because there's not a lot of sources over there. But for a big incident, like the Easy Fire, for example, we had up to 5, 6 more helicopters.
At one time?
6 at one time in the lake at once. So for an incident like that, obviously they're gonna use the lake.
yeah, my thought would be, the cost of having to combat something like the quagga mussel versus installing 3 of these around the lake. In the long run would be a lot less expensive than having that risk factor around. So just the thought there.
What's the forestry, you said they do their sanitation, what's their policy, I guess?
They decontaminate their equipment after each flight. Sometimes they do dip in multiple sources on one flight. But after each flight, they do decontaminate the equipment.
I mean, going on with that question, if they have an emergency out in one area, they're picking up from one lake, they get a call that they have an emergency out here. What's the chance of them saying, hey, we can't do that. We gotta pick up water and go.
Right.
Our biggest problem would be picking up in Piru, dropping in Moore Park and then coming here and picking up and going back to Moore Park or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
Yeah, we've communicated our request to not do that pretty thoroughly. Obviously, there's a public safety interest in mind as well.
Yeah.
But they're very aware of our request to mitigate that risk. And they've been really cooperative and collaborative with us, especially during my time here.
And Phil's done a great job building those relationships and making that very clear with all the meetings with the fire captains and stuff in the area. And they've assured us that if they start with us, they'll stay on us. And it would only be a last ditch effort if they had to cross. But if they start somewhere else, they don't come here typically. And I think the captains do a good job and Daniel's done a great job communicating that. So we haven't seen that and we don't anticipate that. It is a possibility, but they are aware of our.
Yeah, that's what I see, right? You have a big fire in Moore Park. They're scrambling to get it put out, it's getting close to homes. They don't have time to stop and clean. If they're out in.
So in that case right there, then they're gonna have the well field and the well field is right there in Moore Park. They would probably go straight to the dip tank there and be able to fight it.
What's the cost on those dip tanks? For them?
They purchased it. I'd have to look up the number and get back to you on it, but
There's 3 large reservoirs around the well field. They're gonna use the reservoirs before they're gonna use a dip tank.
Okay,
The
great.
other thing with the well field is they're able to put a fire truck at the pad.
Yeah.
And actually land a helicopter and fill it as well. So while they're using the dip tank, they could have a second unit filling at the same time.
Okay, so we don't see that as a risk then.
If anything. You can never say never, but.
Yeah, the risk.
They're working really hard to make sure that they minimize our risk.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Legislative.
I did have one question. Sorry, your presentation, it's an incredible show of our dedication to the community and outreach and all that. Is that available online? We got a great social media response on just that one post, but anybody who kind of wants to follow, everything that we do, is that being pushed out there?
I can provide
on it?
I can provide the presentation to you guys for sure. But yeah, I would defer to Christine on.
Yeah, I mean, generally, we have been doing it on the social and then with the recent, literally recent, within the last couple of hours, press release, like that's all frankly new ground for us. But if you haven't watched the video on our socials, I would recommend it because it does have a fun soundtrack that you didn't get today.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. That's great.
Thanks.
Legislative day, please.
Charlotte. We thought this was a good time. The legislature is on its summer break. But that doesn't mean that Charlotte and her team are taking a break at all. Great.
All right, just give me a moment, directors, please, to get this set up. And. There we go. Good evening, directors. Great to give you a legislative update tonight. We have a few things that I wanted to share with you this evening. In your packet, you have our bill matrix and a number of letters that we've done in the past month or two with regard to legislative advocacy. And tonight, I'm just going to update you on 4 key things. First is the status of our congressional earmark that we're trying to obtain. Secondly, the climate resilience bond. There's been movement on that I'd like to share. We have a couple pieces of key legislation at the state and federal levels. And fourth, our exciting fall preview. We've got some good stuff coming up in autumn. So first, I'm going to start with the Lake Bar Pump Station federal funding request. We have 3 big hurdles that were cleared for that. And as a reminder, this project was selected as one of Congresswoman Julia Brownlee's 15 priority projects to put forward in Congress. So again, it allows full access to the lake due to hydraulic limitations. Currently, we can only access 7,500 of the 10,500 acre feet and need a pump station built to access the rest of it. So we are trying to get some funding through the federal government for that. So CPF requests, formerly known as earmarks, go into one of several appropriation bills. The Lake Bar Pump Station request was placed in the Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies bill. So number 2 hurdle cleared was June 28th. It passed the relevant House of Representatives subcommittee with a $1.105 million allocation. And then a couple weeks later on July 9th, it passed the full House Appropriations Committee, same dollar amount allocated. And I should point out, this is one of hundreds of CPF requests totaling in the billions of dollars. And there is still a ways to go. The US Senate gets involved at a certain point, but we are definitely making good progress and happy to keep your board informed as we move forward on this. Turning to the climate resilience bond, which was SB 867. It's been over a year, probably a year and a half to 2 years to get this on the ballot for November. A lot of different vehicles were discussed. It ended up with SB 867, which we had come out in support of as early as last year. And it will be known as Proposition 4, the Safe Drinking Water, Wildfire Prevention, Drought Preparedness, and Clean Air Bond Act of 2024. It's a $10 billion bond that will be on the ballot in this November. And of that, it contains nearly 40% for drinking water, drought, flood, and water resilience programs. So the bond, I could give you a whole presentation on what's in the bond, but I'm just going to highlight a few key areas. First, there's funding for brackish water desalination and recycling totaling nearly $500 million. $450 million. Notably, there's no funding for seawater desalination in the bond. Secondly, safe drinking water, clean water, just over $600 million is allocated for that. And those are things like PFAS remediation and the like. Groundwater management, nearly $400 million. Regional watershed resilience, about $100 million. We have water use efficiency funded at $75 million and dam safety funding, $480 million allocated. So these are just some broad categories. Again, it doesn't include things like Salton Sea is going to be allocated $170 million. But again, these are all bonds. It's all bond money. And some programs require 40% of the funding to go to disadvantaged communities and severely disadvantaged communities. So just to point out a few of the non-water categories that are included, one is wildfire and forest resilience. We have coastal resilience programs, creation of parks, outdoor access, extreme heat mitigation, clean air. There's something for everyone in this bond. However, the voter appetite for a bond in November is questionable at best. In March, you may recall the governor's mental health bond, Proposition 1, passed with just over 50%. However, oops, let me go back here. Wildfire risk reduction, according to polling, is a top priority among voters. So the fact that there is over $1 billion for that in this bond may make voters have a stronger appetite to vote yes. We shall see. So again, all up in the air until November 5th. But at least there's a bond on the ballot and that did finally get moved forward. Turning now to some key bills I wanted to just bring to your attention. In your packet again is the matrix. It does not reflect all the bills we are tracking. And again, the bills may be of interest to both us and or our retailers. We're trying to really take that regional leadership approach seriously and advocate on behalf of our retailers. As a reminder, we are doing a priority ranking of bills, 1, 2, and 3, which is also in your matrix. 1 is a high degree of advocacy. Typically, we will write a letter from Calleguas as well as sign on to coalition letters. 2 is calling it a moderate degree where we sign more onto coalition efforts. And 3 is we're still basically tracking that bill. So the first bill I want to bring to your attention that's getting a lot of attention from the water community is SB 1255 by Senator Durazo, having to do with water affordability. Those of you on the AWABC committee, Water Issues Committee meeting heard me talk about it yesterday. But this requires all retailers with more 3,300 or more connections to create a low income rate assistance program. What does that mean? It is a 20% discount for qualifying customers. Qualifying is 200% of median household income. And how will it be funded, you ask? By other customers with an automatic charge on the bill that they receive for their water service. It is an opt-out program, importantly, not an opt-in. So when it's called a voluntary contribution on the bill, it's dubious perhaps to have that language in there because it automatically appears on the bill and customers have to make a proactive effort to opt out of the program. We had a very robust discussion about this bill at our June 20th regional legislative group that I chaired. We have at Calleguas periodically. And there were a lot of concerns from our retailers. One had to do with the opt-out provision. At a time when trust in public agencies is not in an all-time high, this is something that might foster further mistrust to have that sort of hidden charge on a bill and not be fully transparent about it potentially. Secondly, our purveyors are very concerned about the administrative burden this might have on them, their staffs, how they're going to implement it is of high concern. And then thirdly, this funding source could be unpredictable at best. Customers can opt in, opt out, opt in, opt out. So if other customers are getting a benefit, how is that benefit continued if there is such variability in who can participate and who wants to participate? So as an organization, we are organizing a letter of opposition on this bill with our retailers. I've circulated a draft to our folks and getting some feedback, but primarily it has to do with the concerns, the 3 bullet points up there. And we will be notifying the appropriate legislators, including our local legislative delegation, about our concerns on this bill. Secondly, another bill we've been active on is AB 2182 by Assemblymember Haney. It has to do with prevailing wage and public works contracts. And in some, it allows prevailing wage adjustments during the course of a public works project based on the Department of Industrial Relations adjustment of prevailing wage, which is typically every 6 months. So we have numerous capital improvement projects with an annual budget of CIP of more than 15 million. We're required to competitively bid out projects. The contractors that we hire are required to pay workers in accordance with prevailing wage. So we have to do everything right, of course. Many of our projects are multi-year endeavors that require pretty precise budgeting, including anticipated cost increases. So unexpected increases like prevailing wage throughout the course of a project could be very disruptive. Could lead to an unanticipated costs and really hamstring the the progress of some projects, presumably. So this is one that we have written a couple of letters to the appropriate policy committees about. CSDA has taken an opposition position on this. We've notified our local elected officials as well. And the last bill I want to just discuss with you is a good one. That's called the Special District Grant Accessibility Act. I mentioned this one before, just wanted to give you an update on its progress. It puts a definition of special district into federal law. As you may recall, during COVID, special districts were omitted from different kinds of federal assistance because no one knew who we were. No one really understood at the federal level what a special district was, despite the fact that there are about 35,000 of them across the US. So it not only defines the special districts, but it directs the White House Office of Management and Budget to issue guidance to federal agencies requiring special districts to be recognized as local governments. And that is something that we need in order to pursue federal financial assistance in many instances. As I mentioned, it stems from COVID. The National Special Districts Coalition is the lead. It has bipartisan support. And on May 5th, the House version of the bill passed overwhelmingly. It was introduced by Representatives Fallon and Pedersen, one Democrat, one Republican. And on July 12th, the companion measure was introduced in the US Senate, introduced by Senator Sinema, independent, and Senator John Cornyn, a Republican. So again, that bipartisanship is continuing. The bill continues to make way. And that is good news for special districts. The next stop will be the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs. And Calleguas has joined the support coalition on this bill. Couple more things to update you on, just to let you know, state legislative session, they've now adjourned for summer recess. They will reconvene August 6th. They have the push in August to get everything done for the final part of the 2-year session. September 30th is the last day for Governor Newsom to sign or veto bills. And the first week of January, the legislators will reconvene in Sacramento for the start of their 25-26 2-year legislative session. And as far as external affairs goes, our legislative fall preview on September 5th, Assemblymember Bennett is hosting a forum called California's Climate Change Impacts and Local Response. He personally reached out to our general manager to ask her to attend as a panelist. And the purpose will be for our general manager to discuss how Calleguas plays a role in adaptation to a changing climate and responsible water resource management. Also attending at this forum will be emergency preparedness and response folks like CAL FIRE, Cal OES. It'll be September 5th at the Government Center in person and also live streamed. So more to come on that. And then a couple weeks after that, we have our community leaders briefing, which I believe you're all informed of at this point. We have Senator Lamone, Assemblymember Bennett, and Chair Ortega from Metropolitan to host a briefing about water to non-traditional water folks, I will say, non-water folks. So we are preparing for that, hoping for about 70 to 100 community leaders to come to that and getting going on the planning. Our regional legislative group will continue in the fall. Our next meeting is the first week of August. October and November, we'll have a wrap up and a preview of the legislative session coming up. We continue with our elected officials tours, and we have Supervisor Gorell working on an October date with him. And that is it for my update tonight. So appreciate your attention. Happy to answer any questions.
That's a lot. Any questions?
It's a lot.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
An update on conservation at California Way of Life.
Yes, and Jen Vasquez was unable to be here tonight, so Jennifer Lancaster, our manager of water resources, will be capably stepping in to handle the update.
All right, thank you. Good evening, directors. Conservation as a California Way of Life regulation hit a big milestone on July 3rd when it was adopted by the State Water Resources Control Board. And this regulation has been in various iterations for about the last year. And back in 2018, it was directed by statute. AB 1668 and SB 606 directed the Water Resources Control Board to adopt regulations governing conservation for retail water providers. So again, it was adopted July 3rd. It had gone through 4 different versions prior to adoption. And we as Calleguas had submitted comment letters on each iteration moving through the process. As it originally was proposed, it was extremely onerous for a retailer to be able to comply with. It was very complex. And so I think by the time it got to the version that was adopted, it has improved significantly, although it is still going to be a very big lift for our retailers who need to comply with it. It's a lot of work. So right now we have kind of shifted our attention to ways that we as the wholesaler can support our retailers. We have 11 who are subject to these regulations. They apply to urban retail suppliers who are, I think it's 3,000 connections or 3,000 acre feet or more a year. So some of our smaller members do not have to comply, but the 11 do. So we are looking again at ways to support them. Our first way that we're looking at is we're developing a cost share program for some software that retailers can use to help them map out water use across their service area and track targets and direct outreach materials to entities that are in the higher bracket of water use per regulation requirements. So we're attempting right now to get that approved through Metropolitan's member agency administered program to offer that cost share to them. And then as we move forward through the implementation and we see other places where we may be able to step in and help. We are definitely dialoguing with them on a regular basis on where we can provide further assistance. For example, maybe educational and outreach materials to help them comply with their CII BMP requirements to educate water users in that sector. So it is a kind of an ongoing process. The regulation will go into effect on January 1st, 2025. So leading up to that date, our retailers will be very busy going through all of their compliance requirements so that they can submit all the required information to the state by that due date. And that is my update on the regulation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, Dan, you want to finish us off?
Lots of the really interesting stuff.
You're trying to top firefighting helicopters, Dan, it's not gonna happen.
It's the normal stuff I do, so it's all about the money. The first one tonight is about the financial statements. This is for May. This is what I typically do at the first meeting of the month, and there wasn't one, so we're gonna do it now. Looking at the water sales, we continue to be short on the water sales. We budgeted about 66,000 acre feet through May, and we ended up at 58,000. So we're still running short, which I've been telling you every time, and we still ran through June. What that means is we're short about $3.3 million as far as revenues going into the district. So overall, between the cost of the water versus the water sales, we're short by about $3.3 million. And most of that's out of the construction and not the operating. The good news is we do have a lot of savings and additional revenues that have covered this shortage. The admin expense continues to be close to $5 million, $4.5 million under budget. So that's helping us make up that $3.3 million. And then on top of that, the tax revenues and especially the interest revenues this year have come in a lot higher. So that has really helped us cover all the shortfall on the water sales side. As far as the operating income goes, overall, we're close to $4 million in the plus side. So more than what we thought we were going to do because of all the savings and additional interest revenues. And then the principal and interest is coming in right where we expected, even with the variable rate bonds. So we're still in really good shape through the month of May, and it's continued through the month of June so far. Now looking at the snapshot for the month of May versus the budget, you can see that overall we thought we were going to get $300,000 and we ended up at $5.4 million. The majority of that is because we had actually anticipated the property tax coming in April, and it came in May instead because the county was behind. So it should have been last month. Last month did not look good because we had planned the other way. So we made up for it this month. But either way, $5 million is still good to see it come back in, and it helps some of our ratios that we're going to go over. Looking at the cash and investment balances, you can see that because of that property tax, our cash did increase. We held on to a lot of that cash. We didn't do the investments because we did have $11 million in payments come due July 1st. So we kept it in the bank and waited for that to come due. To kind of look at the investments. So even though I keep saying that we did really good between, April and May, we did see a decrease in the current ratio and the quick ratio and the current ratio. And that really had to do with the fact that our liabilities increased. As we get into these summer months, our Met bills are going up. And because they're going up kind of significantly compared to all the little bits of liabilities we have, if that bigger bottom portion of the ratio makes a big difference when you're looking at these ratios. It does decrease it a little bit. Overall, these 8.9 for the ratio on this is still really good. Normally it's like over 1 is what you're looking for, and we're at almost 9. So we're maintaining really good ratios. You're just seeing it decline a little bit on these two. One thing it did help was our debt service coverage. So that went up from 1.59 in April up to the 1.9. So we're looking really good there. We should end up higher than what we had budgeted for. We had budgeted at 1.78 because the savings and the additional revenues are coming in better than what the loss in the water sales. We should be higher than what was anticipated. And that same thing goes for the times interest earned. It's kind of the same sort of calculation. And that's all I have right now for the financial statements, unless there's some additional questions.
Any questions?
All right, moving right along. The next one is our monthly report on the water sales, power generation, and investment summary. So in June now, moving up a month, we sold 6,600 acre feet of water. The budget for it was about 7,180. So we continue to be lower than anticipated for the budget. But overall, we ended the year at 65,000 acre feet. So it's kind of what I was saying. I sort of thought after all these lower months out of the $73,000 acre foot budget. So these two graphs, actually, this is the 1 month a year that keeps for the same because it's both same fiscal year versus the last 12 months. And you can just see that, we didn't hit the budget for most of the second half at all. We came really short, which caused the 7,000 acre foot shortage. Looking at the Met bill for June, we had total water sales of almost $8.3 million. We continue to put some water into Lake Bard as evaporation and some of the pulling out for the fires occurred. We have the reconciliation adjustment to get to the water purchase from Met at $8.4 million. We had plenty of LRP funds coming back to us, mostly for the desalt. It's all for the desalters. And we are continuing to cost a little bit of for the conservation program, and we're still having some money go toward the turf replacement, but it is coming to an end. We don't have much left out there to pay on that. Looking at the SMP, we had 75 acre feet. We continued to be short. We only ended the year with 751 acre feet. We had budgeted about 1,320. So again, we were short on this. And then power sales, this is the one we did go over budget on, so that was good, but we've been doing that all year. We had run about $45,000 so far the year to date, and this is only through May. This one's always a month behind. We're at $463,000, so we have one more month for this, and we're way over budget for the year on that one. Just to kind of give you the snapshot of where we are with the dollars. Through June, we had budgeted a total of $122 million in revenues. We had $109 million, so 89% was where we ended up for this year. So we've been short by about 11%. Recycled water still came in low as well, and so did S&P fees. So all three of those were kind of short this year. We're going to work on getting that a little closer next year, hopefully. The rainy season this year did not help much for both the water sales and the recycled water. They both of them kind of fall for the same problem there. And power generation is way over. We're at 154%. We still got one left. Looking at the cash balances for the month of June. So you'll see that in June, we increased our cash yet again. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we do pay Met actually 1 month off from what we're collecting the revenues. So we actually got an extra $3 million for revenues than we had to pay out to Met. So that helped that. Plus, we're continuing to get that additional revenue. It's almost $700,000 a month. So it's really helping us make up some of the differences on that water sale. So we did increase it. You can see that we have restricted investments of $11.2 million. That's prepared for our July 1st payment that we have to make. And, you know, yes, we did pull $5 million out of the investments, as Elaine had said today. And that was really to make sure we had enough money to send off to the trustees. And we do not have them sell investments. I put a hold on the investment money so that when our investments get called or they get matured, the money will sit there until we get a certain dollar amount and then we pull it all down and stick it in the bank. So we don't go have them try to sell treasuries because there's a chance for a loss depending on what the interest rates are. So just wanted to kind of point that out as well. And that's all I have.
Any questions?
Great, Dan.
Thank you.
I do have one, on the S&Ps. So since we're consistently below our estimation because, you know, in large part, Camarillo is not performing or not contributing where they had expected.
We had expected, I mean,
Okay.
I would have to say, because I mean, we don't really know what they were going to be doing. Camarosa's being a little bit shorter than what they had been in the past.
Are we, do we have that estimated for the year, or is that adaptively changing with different increments?
I will put the budget out for the year. So like for this next year, I've already kind of guessed at what I thought they were going to do. Because at one point they were doing a little bit more and they kind of toned it down. And so it just sort of depends, you know, again, it has to do with the rain too, because when they have a lot of rain, the demands are not up. They didn't need the water as much. So we may have to really kind of dial in as to what they're going to be doing. And I may still be high this next year.
Okay.
But we're going to see.
Okay, thanks. That was just my curiosity.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
All right.
Anything from general counsel?
Yeah, just a brief update. As you could see, we had the Calleguas Conflict of Interest Code on the consent calendar tonight. Every 2 years, we're required to provide an update to the county who oversees our conflict of interest code, which is what your Form 700 filings are predicated on. So one of the things I did was to check the authority for all that, make sure that it's all current and in compliance with the requirements. Also, the same thing with the admin code. We've got a lot of statutory references in that. The admin code is the expression of how the district operates as passed by the board. We just want to make sure that all the code sections and the authority is current, that nothing's changed. Did that as well. As you know, we're members of the Calleguas Las Virgenes Public Financing Authority. Their conflict of interest code also has to be updated. Since they're multi-county, we have to work with the FPPC, their Political Practices Commission, to get theirs up. So I'm working on that as we speak. And I've also been working with staff and special counsel on various Calleguas issues to make sure the district's effectively represented, from groundwater to construction issues. And we'll have more updates on those as closed sessions warrant.
So on the there's a ton of red lines on that. Changes on the
admin code?
Yeah. Don't we usually approve that before or once a year? Or?
You did just approve the admin code.
So gotcha.
The changes on the conflict of interest.
Everything's up to snuff.
It's just a lot of changes.
A lot of it was minor. There were a lot of
typos or whatever.
Yeah, typos and formatting.
From the number 5 to spelling out 5 was on there a ton.
Yeah, you take that one up with Ian.
There's rules, man. Under 10 spelled out. Over 10, it's numbers.
Thank you.
He's very adheres very strictly to that rule. But substantively, all the changes of substance were summarized in the memo. Probably the most significant of those.
For those wondering whether I read the board packet or not, there was a lot of number changes.
The biggest change was in the procurement policy, and it wasn't changing the requirements so much as improving the clarity of those requirements.
Yeah, the number was still the same, $49.
Yeah, exactly. We just made some things a little bit clearer.
All right, thank you. Finance Committee update.
Was it me?
You're me.
You.
Oh, there.
Yes, Director. So yesterday we had a finance committee meeting where we discussed refinancing the 2010B bonds. These are our BAB subsidy, the Build America Bond Subsidy bonds. That is one that we're looking to de-risk those bonds, is kind of the way we're looking at it. Those bonds have that subsidy in it that is subject to the federal government possibly taking the money away. They call it sequestration, and they've already taken, right now it's at about almost 6%. So we're not getting the full amount that was promised when we got those bonds issued. And in 2022, they looked at actually getting rid of the entire subsidy, but they passed something right at the end to put it off for 2 years, for 2025. And so we're looking to kind of refinance those bonds at this point. And we are going to be coming back to the board. So it got through the committee. We're going to do some more analysis, come back to the board to declare an extraordinary event with those bonds, that the sequestration of the subsidy is something that we would like to call an extraordinary event, and which time we're going to refinance these bonds.
That's what I was going to say.
When the bonds were issued, was there ever were they ever talked about taking that subsidy away?
They were
A
not.
risk factor involved in that?
There was not at that point. So again, part of the presentation in 2009, they came up with this Build America bond issue where they were going to allow municipalities to issue these bonds, and the federal government was going to pay 35% of the interest. 2010, they passed another act that says we can sequester, we can take that money away from you at that point. So first they tell you, here's your 35%, then they come back and say, oh, now we're going to give ourselves an option to take it from you. In 2013, they actually started to do that. In 2013, they took it down by 9%, and it's been kind of fluctuating between the 9 and the 6% over the last several years. So far to date, we have really taken a hit of $1.3 million. And it's going to continue because that 5%, 6% actually goes all the way through 2030 before it's going to possibly go back up, but they can now change it at any time. So when they did these bonds, there was no talk about them taking away. It was like, here, federal government paid 35%. Year after that, they said, maybe we can take it away from you.
Thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
Board member reports. Hey, Director.
That's Scott.
Scott, and then the next one, Scott.
Correct.
Joint Powers. AWA.
Yeah, we had the AW board meeting on the 11th. They presented a couple updates on the Reagan Library event scheduled for September. They have a speaker who's yet to be announced. They went over some of the finances for it. They've also brought up the fact that costs are increasing and they would like to increase member fees to cover some of their shortages. I believe they had a deficit of $30,000 this year in the red, which they're pretty low. And I brought up a point that I brought up last year, you know, with the Reagan Library event being so costly. If we can't afford it, we shouldn't be doing it. And if it means doing it somewhere else that's not so glamorous, then that should be the path we take. Unfortunately, they really like that location and they'd rather be in the red and have it in that location. So
We should do it here.
what was that?
I don't remember it ever being here, but
My vacation plan.
Yeah.
I think we could hold that many people.
Discussion.
no, I don't think we're large enough. I don't know that any of the agencies has a large enough space.
Did you say Richmond did
We
the
did have the holiday party.
beach center?
That's the first time I got to valet park in my office.
They
I
have,
work
they've recommended
here in my office. It's great.
Be an option, but
they've recommended other places, but in the end, same as last year when I first brought it up, they get shot down. They really like their event space there, so I think they'd rather increase dues, which I'm opposed to be honest.
Doesn't the board ever come to the membership and give a financial update every year so we can see this and have some comments back into it?
They haven't had that meeting yet. They're gonna bring it to the executive committee.
And I could bring it up there as,
Yeah, we should, as members, we should have an update.
yeah, I'll ask for an update. So if all dues are going up, I'm not sure how much we'd be willing to spend considering how much we've increased rates for our ratepayers. You know, how much are we spending on sponsorships? How much are we spending on these dues, these agencies? What's enough, right? You know, that going to these extravagant events and sponsoring them is a benefit to our ratepayers. So that's something I'd like to look at in a future board meeting. What I know we did start the committee, but be looking at it a little bit ahead.
The Legislation and Outreach Committee, isn't that where we talk about memberships?
I think that would be in the committee that you and I are
We sit on.
sit on, which is the
Public engagement, communication and legislative affairs.
Something like that.
then we have the sponsorship committee as well.
Oh, yes, then there is the sponsorship committee,
Yeah,
Oh,
so there's that one.
which was created when we developed the sponsorship, when we approved the sponsorship policy a couple months ago.
Yeah, and I know that kicks in a little whiles from now,
Yeah,
but
the deadline for compliance is, I'm looking at Dan, hoping he remembers.
I don't remember, but
It's either December 1st or January 1st. It's late in the year.
I think we should look at it before then. Considering how expensive these events are and the increases that we've recently made on our ratepayers. That's it for my AWA report. Oh, no, actually I had AWA water issues yesterday where Fernando presented our tunnel inspection presentation. Thank you, Fernando, great job. And that's it for AWA.
In Fox Canyon?
Fox Canyon. It was in the report. It's been a little while ago, so I gotta look at the notes. Give me a minute. And again, this is from the report, you know, at the June 26th board meeting, the Water Master board canceled the second basin assessment via resolution 2024 TAC 04 and adopted the fiscal committee's recommendations regarding collection and enforcement efforts of the LPV basin assessment. The board did not take up the issue of which party should bear the costs associated with the Fox Canyon GMA appeal, but indicated it would consider the issue when the FY 2024-25 budget is brought back to the board for consideration in July. And I did almost participate as in for Gene as an alternate at that meeting, but at the last minute, he called me and said that he was gonna be able to attend. So up to now, I still have not actually sat in one of those meetings, continue to be the alternate. I did meet with Ian beforehand and he's the FCGMA expert and went over some of the board packet a couple days before the meeting was scheduled. And that's it.
I only did it one time, so.
Only one time. Yeah, Gene
After like 10
loves
years, so.
GMA. He won't, it's not last season.
Yeah, he was like,
Yeah.
Metropolitan update.
yes, on June the 24th, I attended committee meetings at MWD and I listed the key actions below. On June 25th, I attended Metropolitan's Camp for Water Workshop. The presentations are listed below. My report on July 1st, I chaired the MWD's ad hoc committee on Bay Delta. On July 8 and 9, we're getting bigger and bigger packets, so you can see almost 2 pages worth of
Yeah.
key events that happened. And I won't go over those because it's just way too lengthy. Let's see, July 11th, I attended EOT's workshop for member agencies on cybersecurity, where I saw Wes taking copious notes. It was a good workshop, by the way. And July 15th, I chaired another ad hoc committee on Bay Delta, and on the 16th, I participated in MWD's Hispanic Scholarship Awards by Zoom.
Thank you. It's a lot.
It was.
Theme today. LAVCO.
We have not had a meeting. It was canceled for last month, but they did put out the ad in the Star and in the Acorns, I believe, for the public seats. I am on that committee and I expect in the next couple months to be reviewing some resumes.
Regional Alliance, Scott and Scott. Reimbursable meetings. Director McMillan.
On the 20th, I attended Awa's Waterwise Breakfast at United. On June the 27th, I attended Colette's Circle the Weather Luncheon. On the 28th, I attended Calleguas' infrastructure tour at MWD's facilities. July 3rd, I took cybersecurity training on browsing. On the 4th, I took cybersecurity training on storing passwords. On the 16th, I attended Awa's Water Issue Committee and the Finance Committee meeting here at Calleguas, and then tonight's board meeting.
Thank you. Director Roberts.
I'll just mention, I think we glazed over VCSDA, but there's no meeting since the last board meeting.
Did I miss one?
There's one coming up. Yes.
But they haven't announced a speaker.
No.
No.
Location.
Since the last board meeting, are we going over June's as well?
Sure.
So June 20th, AWA Waterwise, the 26th, CCWC, 28th, a very interesting, very informative Weymouth treatment tour.
That didn't include Weymouth.
It could have been.
There were, do you mind if I interject and explain? Planned itinerary for that day was to go to the Weymouth facility, which has the treatment plant, as well as the fabrication shops and the water quality lab, and then to Eagle Rock, which is Met's primary control center. When we arrived for the tour that morning, the tour guide had been informed that there was no water service at Weymouth.
Oh.
And so we were going to need to, yeah, correct. And so we were going to need to rework the itinerary. So on the fly, to everyone's credit, we revised the itinerary. We ended up going to Sepulveda Pressure Control Station, which is where the pump station is going to be to push water towards us. We went to Eagle Rock and we went to Jensen instead of Weymouth. So it was.
The staff behind the scenes worked very, very hard.
Yes.
And I have nothing but the kudos for them because it looked like it was scripted just.
Yeah, if you did not know that that was a change that was literally figured out that morning, sitting in the parking lot of Calleguas, you would not have known. So it was a really, really great tour. But we will do another one at Weymouth sometimes because the shops, the fabrication shops are really interesting.
Yeah, what happened is our facility actually had a pipe that burst.
Basement somewhere, so it was our fault.
Or our accident.
It was Metropolitan's fault.
Excuse me.
Okay,
Defer.
we did not go break the pipe.
On July 8th, Metropolitan's won water stewardship. On the 9th, Finance and Asset Management Committee. The 11th, the AWA board meeting, and on the 16th, AWA water issues, and then tonight's board meeting.
So since the last board meeting, on the 21st of June, generative AI training on our portal. On the 24th, had a meeting about FoxCann GMA with Ian. The 26th, I zoomed into the FoxCann GMA board meeting. On the 11th, the AWA board meeting. On the 15th, I took the Calleguas storing password training. And AWA water issues yesterday and tonight's board meetings.
Okay, I had finance committee yesterday and tonight's board meeting.
I'll jump in. I don't have it on my list here. I don't know what date, but I did the password protection generative AI training as well last month.
Okay. Upcoming meetings.
Trisha has a couple of things to highlight for the board. I want to come up to the podium so you're audible.
For this first one, just remember, I am just the messenger.
Oh.
Are due for your anti-harassment training. It occurs every 2 years. So what we're going to do is we're going to send you our online training for that. It's through Target Solutions, also called Vector Solutions. It's kind of transition. So you will get an email with instructions from me or from Candace Anderson in HR, and that will have instructions how to log in. But I believe you guys have all used that platform before. If not, we'll have some instructions in there how you can access that as well.
CSDA has training as well online.
Okay. Try this one out, see how it goes. It is 2 hours. It is timed because that is the law that it is a 2-hour training. So it will have quizzes throughout. Make sure you block that time out to just get it done.
Yeah, I took a training like that recently and I finished it,
say instead of 2 hours, I finished in like 30 minutes. It makes you sit there.
Yes, it does.
For the remainder of an hour and a half, so.
Well, and if you already took the training like for your job, we may be able to count that if you can get documentation. You don't have to do it again.
Well, Target Solutions, they have like, you have to spend a certain amount of time on each part. If you
Yeah.
skip ahead, they.
I just spent 2 days doing training, so I have all the certificates. I'll go through
Then,
and see if.
then by all means, provide that documentation to Trisha and we'll
Okay.
try not to force you to redo anything. The Target Solutions is more video than it used to be, so yeah, we get through it so fast and now it's like way more video. I did it this morning.
Yes.
It's not fun, but if you send over your certificates, we'll,
I don't think.
That wasn't 2 hours.
okay. It's a 2-hour one. And lastly, I just have October 5th. You should receive a meeting notice from me on your Calleguas account that we will be having our employee appreciation barbecue.
Got it.
Awesome. So, yeah, just RSVP with that. We hope to see you there.
Absolutely.
At Conejo Creek North Park this year. So behind the Thousand Oaks Library, it's a
beautiful.
It's a nicer location.
Beautiful park.
Thank you.
And are we going to have a taste test of the caterers?
Committee here. We'll work on that with our committee.
Board members, company meetings. Future agenda items?
Again, I'd like to bring up that committee, sooner, before the Reagan event.
Do you want to do it so the committee was set up to review the materials that are submitted by the potential.
Yeah, for this one, I want the committee to review to give direction to staff on sponsorships going forward, from this
Okay,
point
so
forward, before we give any other sponsorships out.
Okay, so we want to schedule a committee meeting. Okay, Sarah will work on that.
Okay, any comments on written communication? All of them?
If you had any doubt about how busy Charlotte has been after her presentation, here's the receipts. So we have not been shy about sharing our perspective, whether it's, generally we'll sign on to a coalition letter when we can, that's less work on our part. But not, some of these letters are our very own and customized to reflect our opinion, particularly, I know the Public Works, the prevailing wage one was one that we felt really strongly about and we wanted to highlight its impact specifically on us, that can be more effective than just being another signature on a broader letter. So good work.
Yep. Closed session tonight? Before adjournment, we have a presentation.
Yeah, Rob, you could
pass.
No, that's not how this works.
All right, good evening, directors. Just wanted to let you know that you might have seen the email, but I will.
We haven't seen the email.
Okay. Well, I can just make something up.
This is what I missed about Rob.
Yeah, I will be stepping down and position as the O&M manager after 32 years and some stuff going on that I need to focus on. My family and I feel like it's time. So I've made that decision. I've been working closely with Christine, Ian, Grant, and Tricia to make sure that that is a smooth transition. I have the utmost confidence in our staff. They're excellent. They're ready to go for whatever comes our way. I'd like to thank the board for your leadership and support of the staff, Christine, Ian, and all the managers, and the staff here at Calleguas for allowing me to be a part of a team for 32 years. Hired as a temporary laborer and ending like this, I can tell you it went really fast. It does not seem like 32 years, but I'm thankful and grateful for everything the company's provided for myself and my family, and miss everybody. So that's it.
So I want to thank Rob for his many years of dedicated service. There's no one, I don't know that I've ever worked with anybody more trustworthy and dependable. I would literally trust him with my life. I literally have. And, but he's more than that too. As you know, he's very funny and creative, and he's a problem solver, and he's a great leader and a great manager, and he will be missed.
You're gonna love retirement.
It's been inspiring watching you work, and with your staff mostly. I'm gonna point that out. I've spoken to many of your team members and things like that at different events, and it's incredible how highly they all think of you. So that there in itself really points to how great of a job you've done. And thank you. It's where you will be missed.
Thank you.
Enjoy the next chapter.
Thank you. I will.
From a practical standpoint, in the short term, Trisha and Ian are gonna share the acting O&M manager role. Trisha came from O&M, so she knows a lot about how that runs. Ian's been overseeing it. We will be undertaking a recruitment that will be both internal and external in an attempt to fill Rob's very, very large shoes. So
So I just got one more question. The October 5th employee barbecue, you'll still be attending that?
We will see.
And can we make it sort of a Rob retirement party?
Yeah. We have an all-employee meeting next week, and that'll be my opportunity to really say goodbye to everybody, but yeah, it's been way more emotional than I thought it would be. And I'm gonna miss everybody a lot. So the people are what make this go, and it's been really, really cool. So I'm very, very blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Rob.
I think we are too, where we have been. Thank you.
All right. Adjourn.